Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I am joined today by Lauren Decker. She is the Director of Product and Customer Marketing at G2 Crowd. Lauren, how are you doing today?
Hi, Logan. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. We're actually taking a second go at this. We had recorded an interview before, and somehow I managed to mess up the audio and lost track of it. So I appreciate you taking a second go at this because I am excited to share your thoughts on using the power of the voice of the customer throughout your marketing efforts. But before we dive into that, Lauren, I would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your background and what you and the team at G2 Crowd are up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you said, I'm director of our product and customer marketing teams at G2 Crowd. I lead up all of our efforts to make sure that our customers have the tools they need to make the most of our software, and then also work really closely with our sales and marketing and product teams to make sure that we're aligned across all organizations. And at G2 Crowd, what we're really focused on is how we can create an area where people can come, understand the landscape of software options out there, and really make the best informed decision about the tools that are going to be most effective for them. So we're the world's largest B2B marketplace and really striving every day to help folks really improve the experience of buying and using software.
I love it. And you guys have even expanded beyond software into having pages and review spots for service-based businesses as well, right?
That is right. Yes, we have expanded and we offer services as well as some integration options for folks too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you touched on something there in your introduction, Lauren, that I find interesting. Having to, I don't know of a better way to say it, but deal with marketing, sales, and product in your role, managing expectations and communication across all three of those. So I think that intersection really lends itself well to this topic today of how do we incorporate, the voice of the customer? Where is that voice coming into the organization? Where's sales listening? Where's product listening to the customer? One of the things I know you wanted to share on this topic is starting with knowing who your customers are and building out your personas there. If you're going to use the voice of the customer, you have to understand your customer first, right?
Absolutely. And you really need to understand that customer, whether you're in sales, marketing, product. It needs to be a consistent language that you're speaking about who your customers are and really even how you're then communicating with those customers. To do that, I found that building out personas is usually the first best step to do that, whether it's owned by your product team or your marketing team. Understanding who those people are, what their challenges are, what their days look like can be so important to making sure you're speaking their language and really coming at them from a point where you can help them in the best way possible. So some of the ways that you can do that are to first understand that quantitative data, hopefully in your CRM or, some of your other data systems, you're able to see who the people that you're working with most often, what their titles are, what industries they're in, what size of company. And this is all really great foundational data to understand, kind of the most common denominators across your customer base. But then the next step is really to layer that with some qualitative research. The data can be so helpful in guiding the decisions, but getting on the phone with the customer is invaluable. Learning about what their day-to-day looks like, where they're challenged most, how they're trying to solve those challenges. Those are all of the things that are going to allow you to make sure that your product is meeting those needs in the best way, but also that the way you're communicating about your product and your solutions hits the mark.
Mm-hmm. How do you guys operationalize that at G2 Crowd, Lauren? Is that marketing's role? Is it product's role? And I guess there are 2 points you talked about it, the quantitative side and the qualitative side of building out those personas. I would love to hear a little bit about, who and how you guys are doing that. Who's responsible for those pieces? I think that could be helpful for a lot of listeners as well.
Yeah. So at G2 Crowd, marketing is really driving that research, but it's definitely a collaborative effort across the business. If you're working in a silo, you're only going to get a fraction of that perspective. And it's so important that you have a full 360-degree view of who that customer is. And so to do that requires a lot of collaboration with your product organization to make sure that, you're plugging into their efforts, because that's something that a product manager is really doing as part of their day-to-day work. And then working closely with any customer-facing teams to understand, how their experiences with that customer unfold and gathering as much information as you can. So I think what's important is, you do have to have one part of the organization who's really accountable and driving that forward, but then it's critical that you're working with all different parts of your company to get that full picture. So that's how we're approaching it at G2.
All right, today's growth story is about search engine marketing. Clear Company is an HR tech company that was doing a lot of things right. Their messaging was clear, their product produced incredible results, but they were struggling to drive qualified traffic to their website. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first 12 months of working with Directive, Clear Company was able to increase their qualified lead volume by 157%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
So the next thing I know you wanted to talk about, Lauren, is embracing the good, the bad, and the ugly of the voice of the customer. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So as you start talking to your customers and, getting this strong understanding of who they are, you're inevitably going to come across things that they find your company and your product do well, and things that your product doesn't do well. And I think that, while a lot of us say we want that feedback, we want to hear, that constructive criticism, in reality, it can be really hard. Just like, individuals like us, as we're working in our day-to-day lives, we want that feedback from peers, managers, etc. When you actually get it, it's pretty tough. So you have to, I think, really fully embrace that mindset of, we want to hear the good feedback, the bad feedback, and really the stuff that is the hardest to hear is usually what's going to help you the most.
Yeah, absolutely. The praise is great and it's good validation, but oftentimes, just like the best won lessons come from failure, oftentimes the best tweaks to your marketing or your product come from that critical feedback, not just from the positive feedback. And I think whether you're in sales, marketing, or product, that can be tough to take, because we love what we're doing and we see all the blood, sweat, and tears that got it to this point. And sometimes that critical feedback can feel like, an assault on the work, when it's actually just feedback on the current state of things. And if we look at that and see how it can shape the future, we're better off than looking at it and seeing that, hey, it's a judgment on the past and what it took to get here, right?
Right. Yes. And I think part of that, embracing that mindset is, you have to get comfortable with seeking out that feedback. People are typically quick to give praise, and sometimes actually that really true direct feedback you have to kind of pull it out or find the right places to get that. So, starting with one example, win-loss calls, where you're talking to people that have chosen to work with you and you understand why, and maybe why they chose you over another competitor, can be really powerful. And then, of course, on the flip side, understanding, why somebody didn't choose to move forward with you can be really critical. And like we said, that most valuable feedback. But with those win-loss calls, they're a great starting point, but you're still getting some bias because typically it's somebody from your company who's talking to the person on the other end, the customer or the prospect who walked away. So, would also encourage you to layer that with sites like G2 Crowd, where people are able to write in totally unbiased, they're talking to a third party. So those inhibitions are typically totally removed, and they can share the dislikes, the likes, suggestions for improvements. Could be a really valuable source for you to understand where your users are coming from.
Yeah, I think that is phenomenal advice for people to keep in mind. The context in which you ask it is just as important as the feedback that you're actually getting. So, Lauren, the other thing I know you wanted to touch on was, creating a culture where customers are heroes. So we've talked a little bit about where, third-party outlets for them to provide their feedback, good, bad, and ugly, can be helpful. Tell us a little bit about where you guys see this idea of creating the culture where customers are heroes, how that plays into your interactions with the customers, and how you're getting that feedback from them.
Well, I think that this is where those two first best practices we talked about with, the personas and continually getting feedback, it's not a one and done. You really have to continually commit to that feedback, and, your customers and their needs typically evolve. So you have to stay attuned to that. And I think that, one of the ways that you can do that is to create this culture of your customers being heroes, not just with your customer facing teams, but with the whole organization. Usually when you think about, customer interactions, you immediately think about customer success, sales, the teams that are interacting with them on a day-to-day. And absolutely, those teams need to be always thinking about how they can improve and help and develop the customer experience. But if you can get that mindset working throughout your organization, across your engineering team, your finance team, your legal team, these groups that may not have as much or as frequent interaction with your customers, but there's always things that we can be doing in our job and in our role to make it an easier process or to make it an easier relationship with our customers. And I think that when you get people thinking like that, you're able to see the business really move forward and truly create this culture of customer love, because people are always constantly thinking about, how can we hear from our customers what they need, and then, grow our business to make sure that we're meeting those needs.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, Lauren, this has been a fantastic conversation. Again, glad we recorded it so that the world could hear, and not just you and I. But I love your thoughts on this topic and the practical takeaways on, who can own incorporating the voice of the customer, pulling out that data, where you can lean into the good and the bad and the ugly, how you can lean on third-party outlets for folks to provide that feedback, and then how you create that ongoing culture of feedback. I think are all great things for folks to keep in mind, like you said, across sales, marketing, and product. Lauren, if anybody listening to this would like to follow up with you, stay connected with you, ask any follow-up questions, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Would love to hear from anyone who is interested in continuing the conversation. It's definitely a topic that I could spend, I think, hours talking about. If anyone is interested, my email address, I'd love to hear directly from you, is ldecker@g2crowd.com. You can also reach me at LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm slowly and surely building up my Instagram presence. So those would probably be the best places to connect with me.
I love it. I am doing the same, and I would describe it the same way, slowly but surely. So great to hear other B2B marketers are finding their way into Instagram and following our B2C counterparts over there, huh?
Absolutely. I should mention G2 Crowd is also getting into Instagram. So anybody should check us out there too.
I love it. Awesome. Lauren, this has been a phenomenal conversation again. Thank you so much for sharing with our listeners today.
Yes. Thanks so much, Logan, for having me.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.